Welcome students to S Union High School and Junior College. Standard 6 English Lesson 4.4 A Mad Tea Party. Introduction. A Mad Tea Party is a part of fantasy novel Alice in Wonderland, written by Lewis Carroll. This novel is all about a little girl named Alice and all her adventures in a fantasy world. This particular part deals with a tea party attended by her along with the three particular creatures: the Match Hare, the Mad Hatter, and the Dormouse. Alice falls into a rabbit hide and happens to attend a tea party with March Hare, the Mad Hatter, and the Dormouse. Alice makes herself comfortable on a large armchair at the corner of the large table, though all three tell her that there was no space to accommodate her. After getting seated, Alice gets into arguments with them for various reasons due to their silly remarks. Ultimately, all of them get tired of their own talks, and the March Hare suggests that Alice should tell them a story. When Alice refuses, they suggest that the Dormouse, who was sleeping, should tell. The Dormouse, opening his eyes, tells that he wasn't asleep all the while, but was listening to every word that they all were saying. A mad tea party. In this, Alice falls into a hole and finds herself in a fantasy world. She attends a party with the March Hare, the Mad Hatter, and the Dormouse. There were jokes being cracked, personal remarks about Alice, and her hair were made with riddles were being put to those at the table. On the whole, tea party was quite foolish and mad. So now we start with the lesson A Mad Tea Party. Alice in the Wonderland is a fantasy novel written by Lewis Carroll. It tells us of the adventures of the little girl called Alice, who falls into a rabbit hole and finds herself in a fantasy world where funny people mingle with peculiar creatures. Here she happens to attend a tea party with three of them: the March Hare, the Mad Hatter, and the Dormouse. There was a table set out under a tree in front of the house, and the March Hare and the Hatter were having tea at it. A Dormouse was sitting between them, fast asleep, and the other two were using it as a cushion, resting their elbows on it and talking over its head. Very uncomfortable for the Dormouse, thought Alice, only as it's asleep, I suppose it doesn't mind. The table was a large one, but the three were all crowded together at one corner of it. No room, no room, they cried out when they saw Alice coming. There's plenty of room, said Alice indignantly, and she sat down in a large armchair at one end of the table. Have some wine, the March Hare said in an encouraging tone. Alice looked all around the table, but there was nothing on it but tea. I don't see any wine, she remarked. There isn't any, said the March Hare. Then it wasn't very civil of you to offer it, said Alice angrily. It wasn't very civil of you to sit down without being invited, said the March Hare. I didn't know it was your table, said Alice. It's laid for a great many more than 3. Your hair wants cutting, said Hatter. He had been looking at Alice for some time with great curiosity, and this was his first speech. You should learn not to make personal remarks, Alice said with some serenity. It's very rude. The Hatter opened his eyes very wide on hearing this, but all he said was, "Why is the raven like a writing desk?" "Come, we shall have some fun now," thought Alice. "I am glad they have begun asking riddles. I believe I can guess that," she added aloud. "Do you mean that you think you can find out the answer to it?" said the March Hare. "Exactly so," said Alice. "Then you should say what you mean," the March Hare went on. "I do," Alice hastily replied. At least, I mean what I say. That's the same thing, you know." "Not the same thing a bit," said the Hatter. "You might just as well say that I see what I eat is the same thing as I eat what I see." "You might just as well say," added the March Hare, "that I like what I get is the same thing as I get what I like." "You might just as well say," added the Dormouse, who seemed to be talking in his sleep, "that I breathe when I sleep is the same thing as I sleep when I breathe." It is the same thing with you," said the Hatter. And here the conversation dropped, and the party sat silent for a minute while Alice thought over all she could remember about ravens and writing desks, which wasn't much. "Have you guessed the riddle yet?" the Hatter said, turning to Alice again. "No, I give it up," Alice replied. "What's the answer?" "I haven't the slightest idea," said the Hatter. "Nor I," said the March Hare. Alice sighed wearily. "I think you might do something better with the times," she said, "than waste it in asking riddles that have no answers. If you knew time as well as I do," said the Hatter, "you would talk about wasting it. It's him." "I don't know what you mean," said Alice. "Of course you don't," the Hatter said, tossing his head contemptuously. "I dare say you never even spoke a time." "Perhaps not," Alice cautiously replied, "but I know I have to beat time when I learn music." "Ah, that accounts for it," said the Hatter. "He won't stand beating. Now, if you only kept on good terms with him, he'd do almost anything you liked with the clock. For instance, suppose it were 9 o'clock in the morning, just time to begin lessons. You would only have to whisper a hint to time, and round goes the clock in a twinkling. 1:30 time for dinner." "I only wish it was," the March Hare said to itself in a whisper. "That would be grand, certainly," said Alice thoughtfully. "But then I shouldn't be hungry for it, you know." "Not at first, perhaps," said the Hatter, "but you could keep it to 1:30 as long as you liked." A bright idea came to Alice's head. Is that the reason so many tea things are put out here? She asked. Yes, that's it, said the Hatter with a sigh. It's always tea time, and we've no time to wash the things between whiles. Then you keep moving around, I suppose, said Alice. Exactly so, said the Hatter, as the things get used up. But what happens when you come to the beginning again? Alice ventured to ask. Suppose we change the subject, the March Hare interrupted, yawning. I am getting tired of this. I vote the young lady tells us a story. I am afraid I don't know one, said Alice, rather alarmed at the proposal. Then the dormouse shall. They both cried, Wake up, dormouse! And they pinched it on both the sides at once. The dormouse slowly opened his eyes. I wasn't sleeping, he said in a hoarse, feeble voice. I heard every word you fellows were saying. Meanings. Here are some of the meanings of the difficult words. Indignantly, angrily, the anger caused by something wrong, unjust or mean. Civil, polite, well mannered. Wearily, in a tired manner. Between whiles. Between two occasions or two short periods. Hoarse, rough, grating. This adjective is used to describe human voice or sound. Where was the table set out? The table was set out under a tree in front of the house. Who all were seated at the table? The March Hare and the Hatter were having tea at the table, and a dormouse was sitting between them. Why did Alice think that dormouse must be uncomfortable? The dormouse was sitting between the March Hare and the Hatter. They both were using the dormouse as a cushion, resting their elbows on it and talking over its head. So Alice thought that the dormouse must be uncomfortable. Why did the dormouse not mind the discomfort according to Alice? Alice thought that dormouse did not mind the discomfort caused by March Hare and the Hatter only because it was sleeping. A book review of Alice in Wonderland. Alice in Wonderland by Lewis Carroll is a nice book of fantasy. All the characters in the book are very interesting. Even though they seem too funny to be real, the way Alice deals with all the three characters is also quite impressive. The way Alice experiences adventures after falling into the rabbit hole and travels to places makes for an interesting read. The book holds our attention and keep us imagining the scenes as we also travel along with Alice. Alice's emotions and expressions also show her emotional side and how she cares and feels for the dormouse, etc. On the whole, it is a captivating book which entertains us to a limitless extent. Thank you, students, for watching the video.